The massive colony ship New Dawn gleamed in the morning sunlight as final preparations were underway. After decades of planning, humanity's first attempt to establish a permanent settlement beyond our solar system was about to begin. Captain Elena Chin stood at the observation deck, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance, the beautiful blue planet that had been humanity's only home for all of history until this moment. The 5,000 colonists aboard represented every nation, chosen for their skills, resilience, and genetic diversity. They carried with them not just the hopes and dreams of those left behind, but seeds, embryos, and the collective knowledge of human civilization, stored in quantum computers. As the engines powered up for the long journey to Kepler 442b, everyone knew that even if they succeeded, they would never see Earth again. Final systems check complete, the ship's AI announced. All colonists are secure. Permission to engage main engines, Captain. Elena took a deep breath. At 42, she had spent half her life training for this mission. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes scanned the holographic displays one last time. Permission granted, Arya. Take us out. The New Dawn shuddered as its massive fusion engines ignited. The ship was nearly a kilometer long, a marvel of engineering that had taken 20 years to build in Earth orbit. On the observation deck, 12-year-old Maya Santos pressed her hand against the transparent aluminum window. Her parents were both engineers who would help build the colony's infrastructure, but Maya just felt scared. Earth was the only home she had ever known, and now it was getting smaller by the second. It looks so peaceful from here, said a voice beside her. Maya turned to see an old man with kind eyes. Dr. James Williams was the mission's lead botanist. Did you know, he continued, that when astronauts first saw Earth from space, many of them had what's called the overview effect, seeing our planet as one world without borders, changed how they thought about everything. Will we ever come back? Maya asked. Dr. Williams shook his head. No, child. Kepler 442b is 1,200 light-years away. Even with our advanced warp drive, the journey will take 20 years. This is a one-way trip. Maya nodded. She knew this, of course. Everyone knew, but hearing it again made her stomach tighten. Then we better make it count, she said with more confidence than she felt. 3 days later, the New Dawn reached the edge of the solar system. Most colonists were now in cryo-sleep chambers where they would remain for the majority of the journey. Only a rotating crew of 50 would stay awake at any time to monitor the ship's systems and handle any emergencies. Captain Chen walked through the quiet corridors to the medical bay. Dr. Sophia Kim looked up from her tablet as Elena entered. How's Ahmed? Elena asked. Dr. Kim frowned. Not good. His body is rejecting the cryo-prep medication. I can treat the symptoms, but he won't be able to enter cryo-sleep. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Ahmed Nazari was their lead hydrologist. His expertise would be crucial for establishing water systems on the new planet. What are our options? He can stay awake for the entire journey, but... Dr. Kim trailed off. But 20 years of full consciousness in deep space can break a person's mind, Elena finished. Yes. We've never had anyone stay awake for a full interstellar journey before. The psychological toll would be enormous. Elena nodded. Let me talk to him. Ahmed was sitting up in his bed when Elena entered. His normally robust frame looked smaller somehow. Captain, he greeted her with a weak smile. I hear I'm causing problems. Nothing we can't handle, Elena said, sitting beside his bed. But we need to make some decisions. Ahmed nodded. I've been thinking, what if I work during my awake time? 20 years is a long journey. I could design better water reclamation systems for the colony. I could train apprentices during each rotation. I could. Ahmed, Elena interrupted gently. You don't have to justify your place on this mission. He looked away. Everyone else will sleep through most of the journey. I'll live through every minute of it. Then we'll make sure you're not alone, Elena decided. I'll adjust the rotation schedules so you always have company, and we'll set up regular communication sessions with Earth as long as possible. Ahmed smiled gratefully. Thank you, Captain. As Elena left the medical bay, she couldn't help but worry. This was just the first challenge. There would be many more in the years to come. Year 3. Maya woke from cryo-sleep, feeling disoriented. Her mouth was dry, and her muscles felt weak. A medical technician helped her sit up. "Easy now," the woman said. "Your body needs time to adjust." Maya was now 15 years old, though she had only experienced a few days of those 3 years. The rotation schedule meant each colonist would wake for 1 month every 3 years. After a day of recovery, Maya joined the other awakened colonists in the community hall. The space was designed to help people maintain social connections despite spending most of the journey in cryo-sleep. Maya spotted Ahmed immediately. He looked much older than she remembered, with gray streaks in his hair and new lines on his face. "Maya Santos," he said with a warm smile. "You've grown taller, even in cryo." "And you've grown older," she replied without thinking, then blushed. "I'm sorry, that was rude." Ahmed laughed. "It's true. I'm living through every day while you all take the express route." During her month awake, Maya learned that Ahmed had become something of a legend on the ship. He had already redesigned parts of the water recycling system, making it 15% more efficient. He also spent time teaching others his knowledge, ensuring his expertise wouldn't be lost. Maya's parents were still in cryo-sleep. Their rotation wasn't for another 3 months. It felt strange to be awake without them, but she found herself drawn to Ahmed and his projects. "Can I help?" she asked one day, watching him work on a hydroponic system. "Do you know anything about hydroponics?" he asked. "No, but I can learn." Ahmed smiled. "That's the spirit we need for our new world." Year 7. When Captain Shin woke for her rotation, she immediately called for a meeting with the current away crew. "Status report," she demanded once everyone was gathered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, currently serving as acting captain, stood. "We've detected a problem. With the ship's outer hull in Section 14C, micrometeoroid impacts have caused more damage than the self-healing systems can repair." "How serious is it?" "Not critical yet, but it needs attention. We've been putting together a repair plan." Elena nodded. "What else?" Dr. Williams, now visibly older with a long white beard, spoke next. "Some of our seed samples are showing degradation despite the preservation measures. I've started a propagation program to grow new seeds during each rotation." The reports continued, some good, some concerning. The ship was functioning well overall, but 7 years in deep space had taken its toll. After the meeting, Elena found Ahmed in the hydroponics lab. At first, she hardly recognized him. His hair was completely gray now, and he moved more slowly than before. "Ahmed," she said softly. He turned and smiled. "Captain, welcome back to the land of the living. How are you holding up?" Ahmed gestured to the thriving plants around him. "I keep busy. It helps." "And your mind?" Elena asked directly. Ahmed was quiet for a moment. "Some days are harder than others. The loneliness, but then a new rotation wakes up, and I have fresh faces to talk to. Your scheduling helps, making sure I always have people around." Elena nodded. "I've adjusted it again. From now on, rotations will overlap by 2 weeks, instead of 1. More social interaction for everyone." "Thank you," Ahmed said. Then he added, "Have you seen Maya? She's quite brilliant. She's been helping me design irrigation systems for when we arrive." "Maya Santos. She's just a teenager." She's 19 now, at least in elapsed time. And she has an incredible mind for engineering." Elena made a mental note to speak with Maya during this rotation. If Ahmed was right, they might need to adjust her assigned role in the colony. Year 12. The repair crew moved carefully along the outer hull of the New Dawn. Their magnetic boots kept them attached to the ship, but one wrong move could still send them floating into the void. Maya, now 24, led the team. After showing aptitude for engineering during her rotations, she had been trained for EVA repairs. She directed her team with hand signals as they worked to replace a damaged section of the hull. Inside the ship, Ahmed watched their progress through a viewport. At 57, his body was showing signs of aging that went beyond his years. The ship's doctor had diagnosed him with accelerated aging syndrome, a known risk of long-term space habitation without the preservation benefits of cryo-sleep. When Maya returned inside after the successful repair, she found Ahmed waiting. "Nice work out there," he said. "Your parents would be proud." Maya's face fell. During the last rotation, her father had not woken from cryo-sleep. A malfunction in his chamber had caused brain damage. He was still alive but remained in a coma-like state. I hope so, she said quietly. I've been thinking, Ahmed said, changing the subject, about the water collection systems. For the colony, the initial plans assume Earth-like precipitation patterns, but what if Kepler 442b has more extreme cycles? We should design for both drought and flood scenarios. Maya nodded, grateful for the distraction. Let's model it. Arya can run simulations based on the atmospheric data the probe sent back. They spent the rest of the rotation working together, planning for a world neither had seen yet. For Maya, Ahmed had become a mentor and friend. For Ahmed, she represented hope. For the future he might not live to see. Year 15. Elena woke to flashing red lights and blaring alarms. Captain Chun, please report to the bridge immediately, Arya's voice announced over the intercom. Elena dressed quickly and rushed through the corridors. The ship was in emergency mode, with half the colonists awake, far more than the usual rotation. Status, she demanded as she entered the bridge. Commander Rodriguez looked up from main console, his face grim. Multiple system failures, Captain. We hit an uncharted debris field 3 days ago. The shields handled most of it, but several large impacts caused significant damage. How bad? One engine is offline. Life support is at 72% capacity. And he hesitated. We lost 19 cryo chambers in Section D. Elena felt cold. Casualties: 12 dead, 7 injured but stable. Elena closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself just one moment of grief before straightening. Show me the damage reports. The next hours were a blur of emergency meetings, repair assignments, and difficult decisions. The ship's course needed to be adjusted to compensate for the reduced engine power. Resources had to be reallocated, and the dead needed to be honored before their bodies were committed to space. Maya found Elena in her office late that night. Captain, I have a proposal for the engine repairs. Elena looked up from her tablet. The young woman standing before her bore little resemblance to the frightened 12-year-old from departure. Maya was now a capable engineer with a determined expression. Let's hear it. We can't fix the damaged engine completely, we don't have the parts. But Ahmed and I think we can modify the cooling system to boost efficiency in the remaining engines by 8%. It would get us back on schedule. Ahmed approved this plan? Elena asked. The old hydrologist had become the ship's unofficial technical advisor over the years. Maya nodded. It was mostly his idea. He's in the infirmary now, or he would have come himself. The infirmary? What happened? His heart, Maya said quietly. Dr. Kim says it's wearing out faster than it should. Elena sighed. Another problem to add to her growing list. Show me your engine modification plans. If they check out, you have my approval. The next day, Elena visited Ahmed in the infirmary. He was sitting up in bed, working on a tablet, despite the monitoring equipment attached to his chest. Shouldn't you be resting? Elena asked. Ahmed smiled weakly. With all that's happening. Besides, keeping my mind active is the only thing keeping me sane after 15 years. Elena sat beside his bed. Maya showed me your engine modification design. It's brilliant. She improved it significantly. That young woman has a gift. He paused, then added, she should be my replacement when we reach Kepler 442b. Replacement? Don't talk like that. Ahmed gave her a knowing look. Elena, be realistic. I'm 60 years old with the body of someone much older. The chances of me surviving the next 5 years, let alone reaching the colony. We'll get you there, Elena said firmly. I promise. The ship's repairs took 3 months. During that time, all non-essential colonists returned to cryo-sleep while the engineering teams worked around the clock to restore the ship's systems. Maya led the engine modification team, implementing the plan she and Ahmed had designed. When the engines came back online at 108% efficiency, cheers echoed throughout the ship. In the infirmary, Ahmed smiled as Maya brought him the news. It worked, she said, her face flushed with success. We're back on course. Of course it worked, Ahmed replied. We make a good team. Maya sat on the edge of his bed. Dr. Kim says you can leave the infirmary tomorrow. Just in time for you to go back to cryo-sleep, Ahmed noted. Maya hesitated. Actually, I've requested to stay awake for the next rotation too. Captain. Chin approved it. Ahmed raised his eyebrows. That's not the plan. You need to rest. The ship needs engineers. And you need someone to help with your projects. She took his hand. Besides, what's another 3 years when we're building something that will last? Centuries. Ahmed couldn't argue with that logic. As the ship continued its journey toward Kepler 442b, Maya joined a small group of colonists who remained awake with Ahmed, forming a tight-knit community within the sleeping ship. Year 19. Captain, we're receiving the first clear images of Kepler 442b, Lieutenant Park announced. Elena leaned forward in her chair. After 19 years in space, they were finally approaching their destination. The main screen filled with the image of a planet, blue oceans, white cloud swirls, and land masses in shades of green and brown. It looks like Earth, someone whispered. Similar, not the same, corrected Dr. Williams. At 84, he was one of the oldest colonists and had insisted on being awakened for this moment, despite his frail health. The spectrum analysis shows different vegetation, and those oceans likely have a different chemical composition than Earth's. Elena studied the image. Arya, how long until we enter orbit? 8 months, 17 days at current velocity, the AI responded. And status of colonist revival preparations. Medical teams are ready to begin phased revival in 6 months. All cryo chambers are functioning within normal parameters. Elena nodded. Then, it's time to wake everyone for the announcement. Within a week, all 5,000 colonists were awake for the first time since the journey began. They gathered in shifts in Community Hall to see the images of their new home and receive briefings on the landing procedures. Maya found Ahmed sitting alone in the hydroponics garden. At 64, he moved slowly with the help of a mobility aid, but his mind remained sharp. There you are, she said, missing the celebrations. Ahmed smiled, just taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come. He gestured to the plants around them. These will be the first Earth species to grow on Kepler 442b. Maya sat beside him. Does it feel real yet? That we're almost there? Sometimes. Other times it feels like a dream. He looked at her thoughtfully. You know, when I realized I couldn't go into cryo-sleep, I thought this journey would be my punishment. 20 years of isolation while everyone else slept. But it became something else. What? A gift. I got to see this community form. I got to know people from every rotation. While everyone else will remember just a few months of the journey, I lived every day of it. Maya took his hand. And we're going to need every bit of that experience when we land. Ahmed didn't respond directly. Instead, he said, I've completed the water management plans for the colony. Everything is documented with contingencies for different scenarios. You'll know what to do. We'll know what to do, Maya corrected. You're going to be right there with us. Ahmed just smiled. Year 20. The landing vessels were prepared. After 2 decades of travel, the new dawn had reached Kepler 442b and established a stable orbit. Now came the most dangerous part of the mission, bringing 5,000 colonists safely to the surface. Elena stood on the bridge, watching as the first survey team's ship descended toward the landing zone. Scans had confirmed that the selected area matched their requirements: stable ground, access to fresh water, and protection from the prevailing winds. Survey 1 has landed safely, announced the communications officer. They report conditions as expected. Air quality readings are within acceptable parameters. A cheer went up on the bridge. After a few minutes, the first images from the surface appeared on the main screen, a vast plain with blue-green vegetation under a sky that was just a shade more purple than Earth's. It's beautiful, Elena whispered. The next weeks were filled with preparations. Landing ships departed in sequence, bringing colonists and equipment to the surface. Preliminary shelters were constructed, and the beginnings of the colony took shape. Maya supervised the installation of the water purification systems based on Ahmed's designs. His health had deteriorated rapidly as they approached the planet, and he remained on the orbiting New Dawn with the medical team. The eastern reservoir is ready, Maya reported during her daily call to Ahmed. Your filtration design works perfectly. The water tests clean. On the screen, Ahmed smiled. I never doubted it. How about the irrigation channels? We're starting those tomorrow. The soil is more porous than we expected, but we're adjusting. Ahmed's image flickered slightly. Maya, I need to tell you something. She recognized his serious tone. What is it? I've decided to stay on the New Dawn. What? No, we're preparing your transport down now. Dr. Kim says you're stable enough. 4. Maya, he interrupted gently. Listen to me. I've lived my life. 20 years on this ship. I've seen our journey from beginning to end. But down there, I would be a burden. That's not true, Maya protested. We need you. You have everything you need already, Ahmed said. My designs, my knowledge, it's all in your hands now. The colony needs young, strong people like you. What will you do? Maya asked, fighting back tears. Captain Chun has agreed to my request. Once the colony is established, I will take the New Dawn to explore the rest of this solar system. One last mission. Maya understood what he wasn't saying. Ahmed had chosen his ending, not as an invalid in the colony, but as an explorer among the stars. We wouldn't be here without you, she said finally. None of us. And I wouldn't have made it without all of you, he replied. Especially you, Maya. You kept me sane these 20 years. They talked for another hour about the colony's progress and the challenges ahead. Neither mentioned that this might be their last conversation. The colony's foundation ceremony took place 3 months after the first landing. 5,000 colonists gathered in the central plaza of what they had named New Hope City. The structures around them were still basic, prefabricated buildings and temporary shelters, but the infrastructure was sound, and the first crops were already growing in the fields beyond the settlement. Captain Elena Chun, now serving as the colony's first governor, stood before the assembled crowd. 20 years ago, we left Earth to establish humanity's first interstellar colony, she began. Many thought it was impossible. Many feared we would fail. But today, we stand on the soil of a new world, our world. She gestured to the landscape around them. This planet has already shown itself to be more welcoming than our most optimistic projections. The air is breathable with minimal filtration. The soil can support our crops with modification, and the local organisms appear compatible with Earth life. Elena paused, looking at the faces before her, faces that had aged only months while 20 years passed. But our success is not just due to favorable conditions, is due to the courage, determination, and sacrifice of everyone here, and of those we lost along the way. A murmur passed through the crowd as images appeared on the large screen behind her, the faces of those who had died during the journey. And there's one more person we must honor today, Elena continued. Someone who lived every day of our 20-year journey. Someone whose brilliance and determination helped solve countless problems during our voyage. Someone who chose to remain aboard the New Dawn for one final mission of exploration. The screen showed Ahmed's face, older lined, but with eyes still bright with intelligence and curiosity. 2 days ago, Ahmed Nazari piloted the New Dawn toward the outer planets of this system to gather data for future colonies. Before he left, he recorded this message for us. Ahmed's face filled the screen, and his voice rang out across the plaza. My friends and fellow travelers, he began. By the time you see this, I will be far from your new home, continuing our mission of exploration. Do not mourn this choice. In 20 years, aboard the New Dawn, I have lived a complete life, filled with purpose and discovery. He smiled. Look around you now. You stand on a world that no human has ever walked before. You breathe air no human has ever breathed. You are the first chapter in a new book of human history. Make it a good one. His expression grew serious. There will be challenges ahead. Times when you question whether coming here was the right choice. In those moments, remember this: humanity evolved to explore, to push boundaries, to seek new horizons. What you are doing is not just natural, it is necessary. Is who we are. Ahmed's image leaned closer to the camera. The water systems Maya and her team have implemented will serve you well. The agricultural plans Dr. Williams designed will feed you. The governance structure Captain Chun has established will guide you. But it is your spirit, the same spirit that brought you 1,200 light years from Earth, that will ensure your success. He paused, then added softly, I may not see the colony you build, but I die knowing that humanity's future among the stars is secure. There is no greater legacy I could ask for. As Ahmed's image faded from the screen, Maya felt tears on her face. Around her, many others were crying too, not just for Ahmed, but for Earth, for the journey, for everything they had left behind, and everything that lay ahead. Elena waited until the crowd grew quiet again. Ahmed's final mission will provide valuable data about this solar system, but his greatest contribution is already here, in our water systems, in our training programs, and in the hearts of everyone who knew him during our long journey. She raised a glass of clear water, the first harvested and purified on Kepler 442b. To Ahmed, to the new dawn, to new hope. 5,000 voices echoed, to new hope. That night, Maya stood on the hill overlooking the fledgling colony. Lights glowed in the windows of the buildings below, and she could see people moving between them, talking, working, building. She looked up at the sky, where unfamiliar stars shone brightly. Somewhere among them, the new dawn was continuing its journey with Ahmed at its helm. She imagined him sitting at the control panel, gazing out at new worlds no human had ever seen before. "We made it," she whispered, both to herself and to the ship she could no longer see. In her pocket was a small data chip Ahmed had given her before she left the ship. "Open it when you're settled," he had said. Earlier that evening, she had finally viewed its contents, detailed designs for the next generation of colony ships, improved based on everything they had learned during their journey. At the end of the file was a simple message for the next explorers: because there will always be new horizons. Maya looked back at the colony, at the greenhouses where Earth plants were learning to grow in alien soil, at the water purification system she and Ahmed had designed together, at the people who had crossed the stars to star again. This was just the beginning. Humanity's first step into a much larger universe. And somewhere in the darkness above, Ahmed was smiling.